Hollywood, 1947, The Dream Factory. A city built on starlight and celluloid, where ordinary girls from small towns could become goddesses on the silver screen. It was a world of glamour, of ambition, of beautiful people with perfect smiles. But on the morning of January 15th, in a quiet suburban neighborhood, that perfect smile was twisted into a grotesque and permanent grin. A young, aspiring actress, a woman who had come to Hollywood searching for her dream, was found murdered. Her body had been surgically bisected, drained of blood, and deliberately posed like a broken mannequin. The killer had carved a smile onto her face, from ear to ear. Her name was Elizabeth Short, but the world would come to know her by a more beautiful and far more terrifying name: the Black Dahlia. This is not just the story of an unsolved murder. This is a psychological autopsy of a national obsession. A journey into the dark, rotten heart that beat just beneath the glittering skin of the Hollywood dream. Our story begins on a cold, clear Wednesday morning in the Leimert Park neighborhood of Los Angeles. A local mother was walking with her young child, pushing a stroller down the sidewalk. As she passed a vacant, overgrown lot, something caught her eye. At first, she thought it was a discarded department store mannequin, its white plastic limbs broken and oddly positioned in the tall grass. It was a strange, but not necessarily alarming sight. She walked a little closer, and then she saw it. The mannequin was not made of plastic. It was a human body. The body of a young woman severed cleanly at the waist, her two halves placed a foot apart with a strange, deliberate precision. Her arms were raised above her head, her legs spread. She was completely drained of blood, giving her skin a pale, waxy, and disturbingly doll-like appearance. And then there was the face. A horrifying 3-inch gash had been cut from each corner of her mouth, creating a grotesque and permanent grin, a Glasgow smile. The police were called, and the scene was quickly swarmed by detectives and reporters. The sheer, calculated brutality of the crime was unlike anything even the most hardened LAPD officers had ever seen. The body had been expertly cleaned. There was not a single drop of blood at the scene, indicating that she had been murdered elsewhere and her body transported to the vacant lot to be found. The clean bisection of her body suggested the killer possessed surgical skills. This was not the work of a frenzied madman. This was the work of a cold, precise, and intelligent monster. The first and most urgent question for the investigators was, who was she? The victim was a ghost. She had no identification, no purse, no clothing. The police took her fingerprints, but in a world before digital databases, the process of identification was a slow and painstaking one. They sent her prints via a new experimental piece of technology, a sound photo machine, to the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. while they waited. The press descended like vultures. The story was a sensation. A beautiful, unidentified young woman, a gruesome and bizarre crime scene, and the glamorous backdrop of Hollywood. It was a newspaper editor's dream. An eager reporter, remembering a recent film called The Blue Dahlia, gave the unknown victim a nickname that would stick forever: the Black Dahlia. A name that perfectly captured the mixture of beauty, darkness, and mystery that surrounded the case. The name was on the front page of every newspaper in the country, before the police even knew who she was. A few days later, the FBI sent a reply. They had a match. The victim was a 22-year-old aspiring actress from Massachusetts named Elizabeth Short. The police now had a name for their smiling corpse. But by identifying her, they had not simplified the mystery. They had just opened the door to her complicated, transient, and secret life, a life that would provide them with 100 different suspects and 0 clear answers. Who was Elizabeth Short? This was the question that obsessed the police, the press, and the entire nation. The deeper they dug into her 22 years of life, the more a complex and tragic portrait began to emerge. She was not the glamorous, successful movie star that the initial headlines suggested. She was one of the thousands of beautiful, hopeful, and ultimately forgotten young women who drifted to Hollywood with a dream, only to find a city that was far more interested in consuming them than in making them a star. She was a ghost long before she was a corpse. Born in Massachusetts, she grew up in a broken home, a child of the Great Depression. She spent her life moving, from Florida to California, never staying in one place for long. She worked a series of menial jobs: a waitress, a cashier, all while clinging to the fragile hope of being discovered. She was known for her striking beauty, her jet black hair, which she often adorned with flowers, and her habit of wearing all-black clothing, which is what would posthumously earn her the nickname the Black Dahlia. From a psychological perspective, Elizabeth Short was a woman living in a state of perpetual transit. She rarely had a permanent address, often staying with friends, acquaintances, or the dozens of different men who were captivated by her beauty. This transient lifestyle, this web of countless casual connections, created a nightmare for the investigators. Her life was a maze of loose ends and temporary relationships. In the final weeks before her murder, she seemed to be drifting, her life becoming more and more unstable. She had been seen in bars, in hotels, and in the company of many different men. Any one of them could have been her killer. The list of potential suspects was enormous. There were the jilted lovers, the obsessed admirers, the powerful Hollywood figures she may have crossed paths with. The police investigation was immediately overwhelmed. They interviewed hundreds of people, from Hollywood producers to soldiers she had corresponded with during the war. They chased down dozens of false leads. The very nature of Elizabeth Short's life, a life lived in the margins of the Hollywood dream, made the task of finding her killer almost impossible. She was a ghost in life, and in death, she had left behind only a trail of whispers and secrets. But the real chaos was just beginning. The press, having created the sensational persona of the Black Dahlia, now turned the investigation into a public circus. They published every lurid detail, every unverified rumor, every wild theory, and this intense media spotlight was about to attract the attention of a new and terrifying character in this drama. The killer himself, the monster who had murdered Elizabeth Short, was not content to remain in the shadows. He was about to step onto the stage and begin a chilling psychological game with the police and the entire city of Los Angeles. Just over a week after the discovery of Elizabeth Short's body, the investigation took a chilling and dramatic turn. The killer, not content to watch the media frenzy from the shadows, decided to make his presence known. On January 23, 1947, a strange package arrived at the office of the Los Angeles Examiner newspaper. The return address was simply a local post office. Inside the envelope was a collection of Elizabeth Short's personal belongings that had been missing since her death: her birth certificate, her social security card, old photographs, and an address book with the name Mark Hansen embossed on the cover. But the most disturbing part of the package was the letter that accompanied it. It was not a handwritten confession. It was a macabre piece of art. A taunting message meticulously constructed from words and individual letters that had been cut out from movie, advertisements and newspapers and pasted onto a sheet of paper. The letter was a direct taunt to the police and the press. It read, "Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." From a psychological perspective, this act is profoundly revealing. It is the signature of a killer with a massive, narcissistic ego. He was not just a murderer, he was a performer, a dark artist who was now taking credit for his creation. By sending the victim's personal items, he was proving that he was the genuine killer. And by constructing the letter from cut-out words, he was both hiding his own identity and demonstrating his cunning and patience. He was playing a game, and the entire city of Los Angeles was his unwilling audience. This package ignited a firestorm of media sensationalism. The newspapers, now in direct communication with the killer, began to publish every detail, turning the Black Dahlia case into the biggest story in the country. This created a new and chaotic problem for the investigation. False confessions, dozens of people, from lonely attention seekers to the genuinely mentally disturbed, began to call the police and the newspapers, claiming to be the Black Dahlia killer. Each confession had to be investigated, each one a dead end that wasted precious time and resources. The killer's game had successfully thrown the police into a state of confusion, burying the real investigation under a mountain of noise and lies. And then, as promised, another letter arrived. This one, also a grotesque collage of cut-out words, was even more chilling. It read, "Here it is. Turning in wed. January 29th, 10 a.m. Had my fun at police. Black Dahlia Avenger." The killer had given himself a name, a theatrical persona. The Black Dahlia Avenger. And he had promised to turn himself in. The city held its breath. On the morning of January 29th, the police department was swarmed with reporters and onlookers, all waiting for the monster to reveal his face. But he never came. It was another cruel psychological game, another act of public manipulation designed to demonstrate his power and to humiliate the authorities. The killer was no longer just a phantom who had committed a single, brutal act. He had become a voice, a taunting, intelligent, and utterly ruthless presence that was actively controlling the narrative of his own crime. He was not just a murderer, he was a media manipulator, and he was using the city's own newspapers as his personal stage. The hunt for the Black Dahlia killer had become a public battle of wits. between the LAPD and a monster who seemed to be enjoying every second of the game. The Black Dahlia investigation was now the most famous manhunt in America. The Los Angeles Police Department, under the intense glare of the national spotlight, interviewed thousands of people and investigated hundreds of potential suspects. The list of names was a haunting gallery of the city's lost souls, small-time criminals, jealous ex-lovers, and powerful men with dark secrets. Over the years, more than 500 people have confessed to the murder, all of them proven to be liars. But within this chaotic storm of disinformation, a handful of prime suspects emerged, phantom figures who, to this day, remain at the dark heart of the mystery. Let's conduct a psychological autopsy on the most compelling of these suspects. Our first is a man named Robert Red Manley, a married salesman who was one of the last people known to have seen Elizabeth Short alive. He had picked her up in San Diego and driven her to Los Angeles, dropping her off at the Biltmore Hotel on January 9th. Just 6 days before her body was found. Manley claimed he was just helping her, that their relationship was platonic. But he was the last link in the chain. He was interrogated relentlessly and passed 2 separate lie detector tests. He had a solid alibi, but for many he remains a figure of intense suspicion. Did his calm demeanor hide the heart of a killer? Our second suspect is a far more sinister figure, Dr. George Hodel. Hodel was a brilliant and respected physician who ran a venereal disease clinic in Los Angeles. He was also a man who lived a secret life of decadent parties, strange art, and dark sexual appetites. His own son, a homicide detective for the LAPD, would later build a powerful, obsessive case against him. The evidence was circumstantial, but chilling. Hodel had documented surgical training, which could explain the precise bisection of the body. He was a known associate of surrealist artists like Man Ray, whose work often featured mutilated female forms eerily similar to the crime scene. And most damningly of all, secret FBI wiretaps of Hodel's home recorded him saying, supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia. They couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she's dead. But the case against Hodel, for all its tantalizing clues, was never officially brought to a close. Was he a monstrous artistic killer hiding behind a doctor's mask? Or was he just a corrupt man whose own son was determined to see him as a monster? The gallery of phantoms is vast. There were other doctors, other jilted lovers, other small-time criminals who became suspects. The police had hundreds of threads, but none of them could be woven into a coherent case. The killer had been both brutally intimate and forensically brilliant. He had left behind a scene of unimaginable horror, but he had taken all the real evidence with him, leaving only a body and a legend. As the weeks turned into months, and the months into years, the trail grew colder. The police were no closer to finding their man than they were on the day they first stepped into that vacant lot. The perfect murder, it seemed, was going to remain unsolved. The murder of Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia, remains one of the most infamous unsolved crimes in American history. Decades have passed, countless books have been written, and numerous theories have been proposed, yet the identity of her killer remains a chilling enigma. But perhaps the most enduring aspect of this case is not the who, but the why it continues to fascinate us so intensely. From a psychological perspective, the Black Dahlia case is a perfect storm of cultural anxieties. It tapped into the dark underbelly of the glamorous Hollywood dream, revealing the vulnerability and exploitation that lurked beneath the surface. Elizabeth Short became a tragic symbol of the countless aspiring actresses who came to Hollywood seeking fame and fortune, only to be chewed up and spit out by a ruthless system. Her brutalized body served as a stark and terrifying counterpoint to the idealized images of beauty and success that Hollywood manufactured. The sensationalism of the press played a crucial role in creating the legend of the Black Dahlia. The lurid details of the crime, the mysterious letters from the self-proclaimed avenger, and the constant stream of speculation turned the case into a morbid national soap opera. The public became obsessed, captivated by the darkness and the unanswered questions. This obsession reflects a deeper human fascination with the macabre, with the forbidden, and with the terrifyingly unknowable aspects of the human psyche. The lack of a resolution only amplifies the psychological impact. The Black Dahlia became a phantom, a ghost haunting the collective imagination. The inability to identify her killer allows our darkest fears and fantasies to fill the void. Was it a powerful Hollywood figure silencing a potential scandal? Was it a deranged psychopath preying on vulnerable women? The absence of a definitive answer keeps the mystery alive, constantly feeding our anxieties about the hidden dangers that may lurk in even the most glamorous of worlds. Ultimately, The story of the Black Dahlia is a chilling reminder of the fragility of dreams and the enduring power of darkness. It is a psychological autopsy not just of a brutal murder, but of our own fascination with the macabre, our anxieties about the hidden sins of the powerful, and our enduring fear of the unknown. Elizabeth Short came to Hollywood seeking to become a legend. In death, through a horrific and tragic turn, she achieved a dark form of immortality. The smiling corpse continues to haunt our dreams, a permanent stain on the glittering facade of the Hollywood dream.